Welcome to the Gita in Action podcast. My name's Radha Priti, and I'm here with a group of seekers. We are reading through the Bhagavad Gita and talking about its relevance to our lives. And I don't know about you guys, but these sessions, I feel like stick with me like all day long, even into like the next day, and it becomes like my meditation of the things we discuss on this list, on these episodes. So I'm so grateful for this like family community. So thank you all for being here. And today we are starting in chapter 2. We're going to start with text 30. And where we were up until this in text 11 through 30, Krishna speaks a lot about knowledge of the soul. He teaches Arjuna about the knowledge of the soul. And so we talked about all of these beautiful characteristics of the soul. We talked about the relationship between super soul, God in the heart, and the individual soul. We talked about the importance of prioritizing that relationship over pursuit of material endeavors and how much more happiness and fulfillment we'll get by doing that. So today, the text kind of changed subjects, and we're going to get into a little bit of a different subject for a few verses, but there's also so much wisdom to be taken from this to apply to our own lives. So with that, let's get right into it. See if I can find the screen so I can share it. Okay, 1 second. Okay, text 30. Text 30 says, O descendant of Bharta, he who dwells in the body can never be slain. Therefore, you need not grieve for any living being. Okay, so this text is actually the concluding section from 11 through 30. The big theme around knowledge of the soul being don't lament. This is the knowledge of the soul. It's eternal. Your body is not. Your body is temporary. So therefore, don't lament for that which is temporary. So this was the theme of this section. So if we really can buy into the idea that we're the soul, we become fearless. And in this, Arjuna should not give up his duty as a Kshatriya. Again, kind of the underlying theme here. And there's a quote in the purport to this text from Prabhupada that I liked, that I'm going to read out loud, that kind of ties together this theme of war and the soul. And it says, though the soul is immortal, violence is not encouraged. But at the time of war, it is not discouraged when there is an actual need for it. That need must be justified in terms of the sanction of the Lord and not capriciously, which I actually didn't know what that word means. And that means in a way that is characterized by sudden, unexpected, or unaccountable changes in attitude and behavior. So I think it's just kind of like whimsically. So I thought that did a nice kind of job of encapsulating the reasons there that he should fight, but also that this isn't about war. So 11 through 30 gives knowledge of the soul. In this next section that we're going to go into next, 31 through 37, that's what we're going to talk about today. Krishna is going to give the material perspective of why continuing his duty is best for Arjuna. And then after that, in text 37 through 54, he gives the spiritual perspective of why this is what will bring auspiciousness. So now we're going to get into the first material reason. And that's text 231. Considering your specific duty as a Kshatriya, you should know that there is no better engagement for you than fighting on religious principles. And so there is no need for hesitation. So in 31 through 37, Krishna is going to apply the knowledge of the soul that he just taught to decision making. And in this, Arjuna as a soul also has a role as a Kshatriya and the martial garden of society. because the eternal soul also has a circumstantial role, right? Depending on the kind of body that that soul gets in that life. The type of body will kind of dictate the kind of duty that they have in that life. Our bodies are suited for different things, right? Just like vehicles are suited for different things. You have a sports car, you have a Jeep, you have a, right? So our psychology is suited for different things. Our physical makeup is suited for different things. And therefore that becomes the circumstantial duty of the soul in that lifetime. And until one is liberated, he has to perform his specific duty in accordance with religious principles. Religious principles in this time really meaning just like the right thing to do for society, like your obligation to society, your role in society. And when one is liberated, when they're free from material attachments and fully understands the soul, one specific duty becomes spiritual. But in the meantime, most of us aren't there, right? And so in the meantime, we need to be engaged in a way that is conducive to our nature and that is serving the good of society. And that's what this is about. So in the bodily conception of life in this culture, there was different divisions of occupations. Again, depending on the kind of vehicle that you get, the kind of body that you get, the kind of psychology that you have. And this provides a stepping stone for spiritual realization. So the idea is that you're rightfully engaged in your duty and it matches your nature, your psychology, that your contribution to society is maximized, and it's kind of society is kind of functioning as like this functional machine, right? Everybody's contributing in their way, everybody's getting full satisfaction out of that, and therefore it's kind of uplifting society around to maintain God-centered consciousness. Right. And so two of these divisions of occupations were the Brahmanas, which were like the teachers of society, and then the Kshatriyas, which were like the protectors of society. And that's what Arjuna was. And that kind of, again, matched his psychology and his skill set. So what Krishna is saying in this verse when he says, considering your specific duty as a Kshatriya, you should know that there is no better engagement for you than fighting on religious principles. And so there's no need for hesitation. He's saying that, you know, this is your duty, this is your nature, and this is the right thing to do. And again, as we've talked about, in this time and culture, religion was a way of life. Everything, all of the different aspects of society were like integrated into religion. It wasn't just about the conception of God. It was about the right thing to do, fighting to protect Dharma, like a police officer. So when we say religious reasons, that's what we mean. We don't mean fighting over the conception of God. So this is 231. Okay, now we're going to go to 232. O Partha, happy are the Kshatriyas to whom such fighting opportunities come unsought, opening for them the doors of the heavenly planets. So here, Krishna is saying someone who gives up life for greater good is considered glorious. But the Gita says that the benefits are not just in this life, but the next, right? So the karmic activities, the reactions from their actions that they'll acquire in this life from fighting, from doing the right thing, will get them to heavenly planets where there's more capacity for enjoyment. And that's what he's saying here. So in these past two verses, 31 and 32, he's saying that even if he fights and loses, even if Arjuna fights and loses, he attains heaven. And if he fights and wins, he gets to enjoy the kingdom. So either way, it's like a win-win situation. If he fights and he loses, he attains heavenly planets because he incurs good reactions from his reactions in this life, and therefore he's elevated. But if he fights and wins, then he gets to enjoy the kingdom. So it's really all around a good situation for him. This is what Krishna is saying. And again, this theme I want to keep highlighting that this is a righteous war. In a righteous war, soldiers are fighting and there's law and order. juxtaposed to like the terrorism of this age, where civilians are involved and there's fanaticism. It's a whole different thing that's happening here in the Gita. And I just want to keep stressing this point because it's easy for us to take our conceptions of war and what it is and what it isn't in this culture, in this time, in this context, and place it on the Gita. And it's just entirely different. So I want to make sure that we're also kind of imbibing that as well. Okay, so now we're going to go to 233, which says, if, however, you do not perform your religious duty of fighting, then you will certainly incur sins for neglecting your duties and thus lose your reputation as a fighter. So the previous two verses says that if he fights and loses, he attains heaven. Here it is saying that if he doesn't fight, he ignores his duty and incurs sin, then the result is not good, because if he fights, it's always good, because if he loses, he gets those pious credits and he goes to heavenly planets. But if he doesn't fight, then he's going to get non-pious credits, and his karma is not going to be good in the next life. So that's not a good situation. And this is highlighting, there's two types of crime. There's action. We can commit a crime by action or by inaction, which is ignoring his duty. So Krishna is saying here that this particular type of crime would be inaction. Inaction is ignoring your duty, and in this kind of cultural context. And in that way, he would incur sinful reactions for doing that. That's what he's saying here. Does anybody want to share anything before I move on to the next one? The next one has a nice life lesson in it for us, so maybe we can have a little discussion around the next one. So in 234, Krishna says, people will always speak of your infamy, and for a respectable person, dishonor is worse than death. So Krishna is telling him here that he will be shamed if he doesn't fight. Dishonor is worse than death. So if someone has had a lot of honor, if someone hasn't had a lot of honor, the lows won't be so bad, right? When we look at the material waves of life, if someone has a lot of honor, or if someone doesn't have a lot of honor, then if they don't have a lot of honor, it's not so bad. But if someone is used to having a lot of honor in one field, they're really respected, they're really loved, and then they get a lot of dishonor in that field, it can be unbearable, right? You know who I think about when I think about this? I think about that Taylor Swift, like 10 years ago. She went through a time where she was like, I don't know, kind of like made fun of. She was kind of like mocked a lot. And you could see in her next album, she came out and she was just like super strong about it. Like, my reputation has never been worse, so, right? Like she was like, but I think about how hard that would have been, like to be like at such a high and get so many accolades and so much love. And then just like, all of a sudden you're like laughable to people, right? I'll be honest, I never listened to Taylor Swift much until my husband is a Taylor Swift fan. I'm going to just throw him under the bus. He's a Taylor Swift fan. So now I listen to Taylor Swift, and I actually appreciate a lot of things about her. There's a lot of things to appreciate about Taylor Swift. But anyway, okay, moving on. That's a really difficult thing. So Arjuna is a warrior. So if he's a hero, he gets honor. But if he's a coward, he gets dishonor. And at that point, he just flees. Like, there's not really any other option for him in this life. And one thing when I read this verse that I asked my teacher that I wanted to point out, because I think is interesting, is we read about another verse earlier that talks about being the same in happiness and distress, right? And so my question was like, is this contradictory to when Krishna tells Arjuna to, remain the same in happiness and distress? And the answer is that Krishna wants Arjuna to act. So he's going at it from multiple directions. This particular passage, this 31 through 37, is from material calculations. From there, he'll move to the spiritual reasons why he should fight. So even if Arjuna understands the soul, it doesn't mean that material discomforts disappear. And in that, Krishna is kind of meeting him where he's at in efforts to kind of persuade him. So even for us, we have to be honest about what we can and can't tolerate in our life. And tolerance is good, but we have to choose what we can tolerate and what we can't based on our unique circumstances, makeup, and capacity at the time. And we've talked about this theme a lot, about how it doesn't serve us to kind of try to act above the realizations that we currently have, right? Or to kind of try to fake it or white knuckle it, and this is kind of this is where we are. And this like spiritual evolution is like a process, right? And there's different stepping stones, and the Gita is teaching us these different stepping stones. And we have to acknowledge where we are and act accordingly. It's not always so easy just to tolerate, harmful remarks from somebody in a relationship. That's not always so easy. And we can see sometimes, if something's bringing our consciousness down and we need to do something about it. We need to make a change in our external circumstances to protect our consciousness, because we're just not at the point where we can just constantly ignore it. We see that it's impacting us too much. So this balance of both, of like making an effort to kind of increase our tolerance capacity, and at the same time being honest with where we are, and arranging our external circumstances such that they support that, and our environment is conducive to our spiritual growth. Because these things, they affect us. There's no denying it. Like if you're constantly talked down to by a certain person in your life, then you may notice that it starts kind of affecting you. So you start absorbing that narrative. And in that way, it may be important to, have some kind of boundary in your life with that person in that relationship to protect your consciousness, even though you'd love to, be able to show up and just tolerate and show up with love and compassion. And it's important to recognize when maybe we can't do that. And instead we need to kind of create these boundaries or rearrange some of our external circumstances or environment to set us up for success. Right. So this is kind of how this fits in to where we are in the stepping stone path of spiritual evolution, because that's exactly what it is. Does anybody have anything that they'd like to add to that? Nicole, I love Nicole's shares. Please share, Nicole.
Hare Krishna and happy Kartik.
Yeah.
So I actually, as you were speaking, it was reminding me in a different class that I was in recently, we were speaking on the subject of humility. And I wrote a couple of notes down that I wanted to share, if that's okay, because I feel like it really is like the same thing. I wrote down, you must have knowledge to be humble, and that to be tolerant does not mean to allow yourself to be exploited. If someone is treating you poorly in a way that is not pleasing to Krishna, then by you being tolerant, you are feeding their bad karma. It is more humble to set a boundary and stand up for yourself out of compassion for the other person. Humility can mean to stand up for yourself when it might come with the outcome of being disliked or displeasing to others, so long as it is not done from a place of pride.
Wow. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And it really does fit in nicely, because we've talked a lot too about that theme of humility. So kind of tying it into this tolerance and having these qualities for ourselves and others. That's beautiful. Thank you. Mariah had a heart there too, so I think she appreciated that. Does anybody else want to share their thoughts on it or experiences? Bava Mai, please share.
Hare Krishna, everyone. I just wanted to share. This has always been one of the verses in Bhagavad Gita that has always stuck out to me. I guess in my mind and my version of Arjuna, it's like when Krishna says this, like dishonor is worse than death. Like when he throws that card at him, it's like, okay, I'll do it. I don't want that public humiliation. So, so it's like, you know, that was really like a heavy hitter, just reading the narrative and just hearing how Krishna throws that at him. Um, it just seems like that's the hammer that kind of nails it in for Arjuna, because he is so valiant, and such a great reputation of being one of the best fighters in the world at that time, top five. And it just seems like that would have been something that really, really, I want to say, um, would have deterred him from
Mm.
what he wanted to do. But like I said, that is my version, but yeah, it always stood out to me. I just wanted to share. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, because Krishna knows his psychology, right? And there's actually in the different divisions of society, these occupations, there's checks. There's like built-in checks so that things can't get exploited or gone wrong. And one of the things about the Satriyas is that they have such a high code of honor. Like it literally pains them to not act in accordance with their word. And this is just again their build. It's ingrained in them. It's their makeup. And so Krishna knows that, and he's saying if you don't fight, it's going to be miserable for you. And yeah, that's a real thing for us, to evaluate what's our makeups, what's our capacities, and how can we set ourselves up in a way that is conducive for our spiritual growth and protecting our consciousness. And if we do that, then the byproduct of that is that we're happy and peaceful in life, right? We're not like fighting against the grain. If we can do that, then we're also going to have a happy life. We're going to feel fulfilled in our careers or our roles or our relationships. And that's really important for spiritual life because that affects our consciousness directly. So we really kind of have to start there. Does anybody else want to share anything about that?
I'll share something. A
Please.
realization I'm having is just like, even like my role as like, like a female and as a mother, a lot of times there's a lot of controversy in ISKCON over like the role of a woman. And our modern society teaches us so much. Like, I'm not saying you can't go and be a career woman, but to be a career woman and to like raise a family, it creates so much anxiety, like I did it for like 2 years. I mean, I still have to work and everything, but chasing a career and trying to be a mother, it was like my brain like couldn't handle it,
Mm.
And once I started to finally honor like my femininity and like be like, no, I want to be a mother. Like being a mother is honorable. Being a mother and staying home and, taking care of my home, it's an honorable thing. And I see so many women, I just saw someone post the other day. They're not like necessarily a devotee or anything, but they're like, how do I balance being a mother, chasing a career, working on my mental health, being a good partner, being a kind mother, taking my child to sports and this and that and that and this. And it's just like, it's not natural. Like if we were supported to be a mother, to stay home and care for our home, or maybe just work a little bit outside the home, but we're not the main breadwinner and we don't have to provide so much income, then like we would be calmer, we would be happier, we would be in our natural position. And I'm not saying every woman is, set up for that, but once you become a mother, like that instinct becomes so strong to just want to be
Mm.
home. And it's not honored today in today's society, it's like the opposite. It's like your value and your worth is not put on being home. Your value and your worth is put on making money and being productive in society. But who's suffering when we do that? Like the child has to come home or go to some random person to be watched, or and um it's just like kind of crazy. But anyways, not to go off a whole rant, but I've just noticed it personally in my own life, just even working less and like taking a less paying job and being able to adjust my schedule to where I can be home more. I'm so much more peaceful. I have time for my spiritual practice more. And it's just like my connection with my daughter is stronger. And it's just like, that's, I can see like, you know, if women could be honored to be a woman, you know, that's our, it's our dharma, right? Like that's naturally our dharma. It's not like a thing to be put down about. It should be a thing to be honored and a thing to be valued, and
Yeah. You know,
society could function. But
yeah,
go
I
ahead.
think it's like unique for every woman. Like some women are like, I need to work. If I don't work, it's not going to work for me. And that is like great. But I'm the same as you. When my husband and I decided to have kids, I said, look, I don't think I can do it all. I don't think I can handle that. I think it'd be too much for me. If we have kids, I'm going to need to be able to stay home. Or if not, then maybe we shouldn't have kids because I don't think I can handle that.
Yeah.
And he was agreeable to that, and that was great, and that's what works for us. But yeah, this is why kind of letting go of some of these like societal expectations or norms that we've created, it's like, you know, every person's going to be different, and they have to decide what's going to bring out the best in them, what's most conducive to their nature, how to balance their life such. And that's everybody's unique responsibility.
Right.
And that's what this knowledge is so wonderful, because it's not saying one way or the other. It's saying be real and
Right.
do what works for you and what's going to elevate your consciousness.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
Yeah. Thank you, Haribol.
Well, Neil, do you want to share?
Yeah. Yeah. Mariah, you are honored. I'm honored. I just and actually all of you. I wasn't on Monday's call, but I listened to it, and each of you were speaking your truth. And you know, you're talking about this kind of up and down moments, which I think this is touching on as well, is that sometimes you're in your fame and in your glory and in your truth, and other times you find yourself maybe not there, lamenting, torturing yourself, and you know, so there is a shift, and for me, the often the way that I move is I'll be in this lamenting or torturing myself, and then I'll realize I'm in a state of fear, and I can kind of shift that to a state of faith. It's like a pancake. You just flip it over, and if I take what I'm fearful about and then shift it to I'm faithful that's going to be okay, then you know. And I've had a long career as a video guy, and when I started, nobody had cameras on their phones, or I mean, not for 20 years or 25 years after that. And so during that time, you know, when I started, there was no web, and all of a sudden the web came along, and that was the way people were communicating. So I was like, oh, I'm a video guy. And then people started putting videos on the web, and oh, okay, I'm doing great again, you know. So there's shifts, and now as I'm getting a bit older, there's younger video folks, and it's like it's their time to thrive, and I'm doing what I love in my career by working with people that I can assist them in getting their message across when they're doing good work in the community with nonprofits and social service agencies, and I mean, my strength at this point might not be the newest piece of equipment, but I can always talk to somebody and find out what they're doing in their life, what makes them special, what are they the proudest of. I've done veterans recently for Veterans Day, and what are these veterans proudest of? What did they do in their service? And they talk about their family, and I look around this room, and I see you guys as my family, and just even though I wasn't there, I felt like I was circled with your souls, and circled by your love. So pretty wonderful. Thank you, guys.
Wow, thank you for sharing, all of you. I love this family too. I love that everybody shares and kind of bonds us together in this knowledge and this process. Denny says on the board, I've always let my wife be a stay-at-home mother. I think it's wonderful for the children and spiritual life. Thank you, Denny. And Mariah, you're getting lots of support out of this. That's great. And then Denny says, I think this day and age is hard on all of us mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. But if we focus on the spiritual self, then that pushes the mental ups and downs to the side and the love pushes through, just like the water flowing through the hands of the man filling the water pot for his family. Oh, so nice. Yeah, and that's what we're doing here. And that's where we really try to get less engrossed in material considerations and norms and obligations and really try to get rooted in the real self and in what we need to support that evolution. So thank you. Okay, so let's move on to 235. 235 says, the great generals who have highly esteemed your name and fame will think that you have left the battlefield out of fear only, and thus they will consider you insignificant. So Krishna's continuing on this argument of what he will have to face if he doesn't fight. So again, before this, he talked about getting the sinful reactions from not fighting. Now he's moving on to infamy. He says that Krishna's saying that if Arjuna leaves the battlefield, the other great generals won't think that it's out of compassion for the other side, but fear for his own life. And thus he will lose all honor. Like, that's humiliating, right? For a warrior whose duty is to protect society, it's cowardly to be fearful for your own life when that's your duty. That's, again, this is just their psychology, their makeup. It'd be a pretty big hit for him. So in the culture of warriors, infamy is an important consideration in their action or decision. And we talked about the checks on powers for the different divisions of society. And that's one of the checks, is that they know the Kshatriyas are so honorable. They're so honorable that they won't go against their words. And if they do, they know it's like a death sentence for them internally, right? It's like their consciousness can't handle it. And I'm sure we all have different things, that we just can't, because we know that it will just bring us to a low. It will just, our consciousness, some of us are probably like that also, right? Like if we go against our word or we can't live up to what we say we're going to, it's like, it crushes us internally. Right? And it's probably different for everybody. So for warriors, a sense of honor is very important in their psychology. So if we go back to 2.2 to 2.3, Krishna says kind of the same thing when he says, this weakness doesn't behoove you, stand up and fight. And then after that, Krishna gave all that knowledge of the soul that we talked about, right? And we learned really like the true north for the soul, like where we want to get. If we were really like seers of the soul, if we were really evolved and had realized all these things, what that would look like for us, what that actually means, what the soul actually is, what the relationship of the soul with the super soul is. We learned all of that. And so now he said that this doesn't behoove you. He gave all the knowledge of the soul. Now he's saying the same thing. He's going back. He's saying the same thing. This doesn't fit you. Even though he has knowledge of the soul, he's still in the body. Arjuna's still in the body. So Krishna's using this to persuade, because it's more important to get the person to do the right thing than to do the right thing for the right reason. Right? For example, like giving kids candy for good grades, or giving kids, like, I don't know what they do now, probably not candy. Now the ante's probably way higher for good grades. Kids probably make pretty good money for good grades. But, it's not to drive the kid to be motivated by candy or video games or, whatever it is. It's to get the kid to perform well in school, because the parents know that long-term, that's going to benefit them the greatest. And the kid doesn't quite have that perspective yet to understand or to be able to see that far away, right? For like an 8-year-old, college is so far away that it's like, why am I that? It doesn't even register for them, right? But a parent can see. So a parent tries to kind of motivate them accordingly to kind of instill this in them and get them to to do things that they know are going to be good for them in the long run. And that's kind of what Krishna is doing here. He's giving Arjuna multiple reasons to perform the right action, and he's meeting him where he's at. And again, this is so important for us in our relationships, or if you're in a position like that, maybe a parent position, or maybe you're a boss, or is meeting people where they're at, not speaking realizations above what they're going to be able to absorb and imbibe, because then maybe it'll just frustrate them, or it's not going to have any effect, or you're going to come off as arrogant and lose trust, whatever it is. Trying to kind of understand where somebody is and meeting them where they're at is going to be the most effective. And so Krishna's using this Kshatriya psychology to get him to do the right thing to progress in his spiritual life, because he knows that in his spiritual life, this was also what will be best. So that's what's happening here. Does anybody want to speak to that? To meeting people where they're at, or anything? Okay, so the knowledge of the soul can be understood on multiple levels, and we've talked about this before too. Arjuna's kind of understanding where he is right now in this moment is, I have a soul. That's kind of like the knowledge of the soul, the realization level that he's at. And that's what these reasons are speaking to in 231 and 237. Krishna's realization is more of, I am a soul, right? Like he sees individual people, entities as that, I am a soul. And that's where the next reasons are going to speak. So today we're going to finish this section. We're going to get to 37 today. We're going to finish the section. And then our next class, we'll talk about the spiritual reasons why fighting will bring about auspicious actions. And that is more in line with the narrative that I am a soul. But that's not where Arjuna is yet. And so Krishna's trying to kind of get him there. He's kind of giving him reasons for all angles to get him to do the right thing. So that's 235. We're going to do 236 and 237 together next. And then we'll talk about the overall lesson from this section. So in 36, he says, your enemies will describe you in many unkind words and scorn your ability. What could be more painful for you? So Krishna is continuing the same thread of thought here. And then in 237, he says, O son of Kunti, either you will be killed on the battlefield and attain the heavenly planets, or you will conquer and enjoy the earthly kingdom. Therefore, get up and fight with determination. So this is the conclusion of this section. He explained the material implications if he doesn't fight. Now he's saying, if you fight and win, you get earth. If you fight and lose, you get heaven. So get up and fight. In the prior verses, he said, if you don't fight, you're either going to get sinful reactions or you're going to get infamy, both or both. And that's terrible. So your only real option here, materially speaking, is to fight. Again, trying to get him to do the right thing, maybe not for the full picture right reason, but trying to get at that, trying to persuade him. So the overall lesson in this section for us that I wanted to kind of discuss with you guys is the importance of sticking to the nature that we are born with, because that is the way to reach the soul level and therefore the true path to happiness. So when we talk about knowledge of the soul and how having that is our real identity, we also acknowledge that most of us aren't to that point of realization yet. Like we talked about all that knowledge of the soul. We said, this is our true north. This is how it would look if you were really leaning into this, realization that I am the soul. These are the qualities of the soul. These are the qualities of life that emanate from the soul. We talked about how when you're feeling fear or anything that's lower than those qualities, you are in your ego, right? We talked about how to differentiate between that. And the reality is that that's where most of us are, right? This is a process. Most of us are not to the point where we're just always realized knowing we're the soul, but we're trying to get there. And Krishna's going to give us all a path to get there. And where he is now is saying, be yourself, act in accordance with your nature. Because if you artificially try to be someone else, you'll put on more and more masks rather than remove them. Right? We talked about all the masks of the ego, the mask that we put on to hide our fear or to console our fear, right? But what we're trying to do here is take off those masks. We're not trying to put more on by taking on other people's, right? So this is kind of the first step. Happiness is not experienced only through emotions, but when you live and act in accordance with your nature. When you follow your true calling, there's career growth and satisfaction. But for Arjuna, he was going to neglect his true nature under the notion of protecting his family. But by following his true nature, he was bound to reach great heights in life and in the heavens after. And Krishna is pointing out to him, and this is the lesson for all of us, right? Listen, this is a good one, that he can't be kind to others until he's kind to himself. Nicole kind of hit on this a little bit with what she was reading, right? We can't be kind to others until we're kind to ourselves. Only when he follows his true nature will he overcome sin. But when we do injustice to others, oftentimes it's because we are dissatisfied with ourselves, right? We're just kind of projecting that dissatisfaction. And therefore, we end up doing injustice to others. And that doesn't feel good, right? Like if we fail to set up a proper boundary in a relationship and the person gets too close for our comfort, and then we act out in a way that just doesn't feel good. And then that can take us on a downhill spiral, right? I'm speaking directly from experience when I say that. So better to be true to ourselves, right? Set things up in a way that we need to be conducive for our growth, and that we feel loved and supported, and that's kind of our environment. It's necessary for spiritual growth. But when we are following our true natures and satisfied, there's no need to do injustice, right? Like if you're a happy person, then when you see somebody else doing well, you're not going to feel bad about it. You're going to be able to cheer them on, right? You're going to be able to be their cheerleader. But if you can't get yourself to that place first, then you're really not going to be able to show up for anybody else. So if we want to have these healthy, enduring relationships, if we want to attract healthy people to us, we have to be healthy. And this is the work, we have to get ourselves in a good spot where we're satisfied with what we're doing in life, with what we're engaged in, with what our contribution is. Does anybody want to speak to that? Up here, a secure and satisfied self brings out the best and not the beast in us. So that's all of our own work. What does that actually look like? And if we feel that kind of envy come up or comparison, or, it's time to kind of think like, okay, is there some kind of dissatisfaction in where I am or where I'm going? These are just, again, these wonderful things that come up for us. We talked about kind of hugging the ego when we see it pop up. It's good for us to kind of reevaluate, like, why am I feeling jealous of that person? Or why can't I support that person in their success? Where am I not feeling fully satisfied or content? Nicole says #goals. Yeah, right. And the other thing is, like, we can't rearrange all of our life at once. So it's good to kind of, think through these things and, like maybe you're focusing on a certain relationship at the moment, or maybe you're focusing on, where you are in your career at the moment, but it is important that we're working towards kind of having that healthy support system and environment that we feel is conducive to our nature and that we can really thrive in as individuals. And that doesn't mean like, climbing the career ladder, but thrive means that you're satisfied internally, that you feel that your contribution is worthwhile, and you feel satisfied in your efforts. So this is 30 through 37, but then the important thing to remember is all of this in context. This is also not the highest truth. This is not the highest truth, but it's so important to really flush it out in the evolution of spiritual progress. But we all know that we can't depend too much on the results of our nature, or we can become too attached, and this can bind us. Because again, this is all temporary. It's all temporary. We can't forget this. We can't forget the context of all this. So in the next section, Krishna will explain how this is not the deepest level of satisfaction. And he explains the next stepping stone. In the next section, Krishna will explain the next stepping stone, such that we can engage according to our natures, but not be bound by it, with the goal to ultimately get to realization of the self. So the Gita is so wonderful in that it kind of gives us the goal. It says, this is what you are. And now I'm going to show you how to get there. And he takes us on a step-by-step process of how to get there. And this is like the first little baby stepping stone. And a good thing for us all to kind of reflect on this week is like, are the things in my life, the way I'm investing my time, my energy, my resources, are they in line with my true nature? You know, are they bringing me this internal satisfaction? Do I feel it's loved and supported and nourished in a way that my consciousness is at least peaceful and hopefully able to evolve? All right, that's the episode for today. Do you guys have any reflections? Nicole,
I have a
please
question,
share.
actually.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, Arjuna's going through all of this and he's gaining all of this knowledge from Krishna. And I'm wondering, like, Arjuna himself as a person, like, does he have a sadhana? Like, does he have a daily practice?
That's a good question. I guess when we talk about a sadhana now for us, you know, we are chanting, we're reading wisdom. It was like this kind of wisdom, this spiritual knowledge. It was really part of their society. You know, it was like what they did in their free time. The elders would tell stories, you know, and it was just constant. It was just like part of the culture. And there was a verse that we talked about where Krishna used that he kind of, oh, mighty armed Arjuna, he kind of mocked him because he knew that Arjuna did believe in the Vedas and he did believe in this kind of worldview. So at that time, I think it was really just built into their society, like a sadhana. Like it wasn't for us. A lot of times a sadhana is like, okay, I wake up in the morning and from 6 to 9, or, you know, before I go to work, I'm engaged in my sadhana, and then I go to work and then I'm doing work, and that's kind of completely independent. At this time in this culture, everything was so enmeshed, everything was so like integrated that I don't know that it looked the same, but it was there internally. If that makes sense.
They probably had like a lot of deity worship and temple worship then.
Oh, for sure.
Because I know, like, when we read the pastimes of when Krishna's in Vrindavan, which he's there before he goes and he has the battle at Kurukshetra. You know, the residents of Vrindavan, they did Narayan Lakshmi worship. And, you know, they talk about them doing like their pujas and their worship and stuff like that. So it was probably more that type of sadhana and worship at that time.
Yeah, and the temples are like the center of the societies. Like, and you still see that if you go to India. You know, if you're in a really holy place, all the people wake up early and they go to the temple first thing in the morning and they worship. And it's really beautiful because they're like so excited. They have just like such joy and devotion in their like their whole body just kind of like resonates that. But that's just like their life. And then at the end of the day, they go back to the temple and it's all just like integrated into their daily life. And that's just how it goes. The deities are the center of the town. The temples are the centers of the town, and the meeting place, the social aspect of things, the, you know, devotional aspect of things, the spiritual aspect of things. So thank you. Thanks, Mariah. Anybody else want to share? Okay. Well, thank you all for coming and sharing your realizations and making this such like a family affair. I love that about these classes. And so happy that we're all just walking each other home here. So thank you for coming. And what day is it? Is it Thursday? Okay, I'll see you on Monday then. Thank you.
Thank you, Haribol.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Nicole.
That was such a good class. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brittany.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks
Good
that we
morning.
didn't hear from you today. I missed that. I'm gonna have to call you out next time.
All right, more when we get back from India.
Yes. Yes. Safe travels if you're going to India.
Yes, thank you. Love you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Grateful to you all.